Your gadgets are a lie. My phone didn't die, it was scheduled. Your fridge, your printer, even your light bulbs, quiet death dates baked in. Get this, my printer refused to print a boarding pass because it did like the ink. Meanwhile, my mom's kitchen light felt older than our family dogga until it suddenly was. Here, why this matters. Forced upgrades drain wallets, flood landfills, and hand control to companies that decide when your stuff stops working. Today we're pulling the thread, from a 1920s cartel that fined bulbs for lasting too long to modern firmware that slows your phone. To see how deep this goes, meet the bulb that refused to die. The bulb that wouldn't die. Phoebus Cartel blueprint. In a firehouse in Livermore, California, a tiny bulb glows. It's been glowing since the McKinley administration. People bring cupcakes to its birthdays. The camera loves it. It shouldn't still be alive, but there it is, soft, stubborn, and quietly insulting a century of innovation. To understand why that insult still lands, we need to go back to the winter of 1924, Geneva. Representatives from General Electric, Osram, Philips, and their allies checked into a lakeside hotel under a crisp, harmless name, Phoebus. Officially, they were standardizing the light bulb business. Unofficially, they were writing a rule that would outlive them. Cap household bulbs at 1,000 hours. Stakes, real ones, arrived with that number. Before Phoebus, engineers regularly produced lamps rated 1,500 to 2,000 hours. Some went longer. There was pride in durability. Buy once, forget it was the point. But long life kills repeat sales. A 2,500-hour bulb isn't just bright, it's a business problem. Inside the cartel, they didn't leave problem to chance. They built laboratories. They tested member bulbs. They kept ledgers. If a company's lamp burned beyond the target, it was fined per lamp. A bulb that lived too long wasn't a triumph, it was an invoice. That's the part that changes how you feel about the warm glow over your kitchen sink. Durability became a liability on purpose. Action looked ordinary from the outside. New packaging, new model numbers, standardization for quality. In factories, though, filaments were retooled. Thinner tungsten, coiled differently, gas fills adjusted, supports tweaked to fail at predictably shorter intervals. Engineers still pushed for efficiency and brightness, but the life curve bent downward by design. The cartel didn't just set a price floor, it set a death date. Meanwhile, something else was happening. Marketing reframed the cut. 1,000 hours was sold as a feature, consistent performance, reliable brightness, safer operation. And to be fair, there were trade-offs. Make a filament beefier and you often dim it or burn more power. But that nuance got used like camouflage. The lab finds did the real enforcement. The quality seal did the public relation. What nobody outside those rooms knew at the time was how clean the feedback loop had become. Quarterly reports compared test burns against quotas. Factories that overshot got letters and penalties. Engineers learned where to set the dial to avoid trouble. The cartel lasted only into the 1930s on paper, but the 1,000-hour norm stuck. When regulators later dismantled the formal alliance, the design habits and supply chains didn't vanish. Standardization had socialized a shorter life as normal. Human stakes weren't abstract. Families budgeting for school shoes found themselves buying bulbs every year. Hardware store owners watched the reorder rhythm speed up. A factory foreman who'd once bragged about a workhorse lamp now taught his crew to meet the spec, not exceed it. One worker remembered packing crates labeled improved and thinking improved for who. Here, where it gets under your skin. This wasn't about making something fragile enough to fail immediately. It was about tuning reliability to maximize revenue without triggering revolt. The perfect crime is boring. Your hallway light dies just often enough that you don't suspect anything. You shrug, grab another, and move on. Then a little city bulb in California keeps burning, and it ruins the shrug. It proves a physical truth engineers already knew. Longevity is a knob, not a miracle. Turn it one way and you sell fewer bulbs. Turn it the other and you sell a story. This was the moment everything changed because it offered a blueprint bigger than lighting. If you can align labs, suppliers, and messaging to normalize a shorter life while calling it quality, you don't need conspiracies forever. You need habits. Habits become industry standards. Standards become design constraints. New engineers inherit the spec sheets, not the meeting minute. Meanwhile, psychological obsolescence showed up to help. New shapes, frosted glass, brighter daylight branding. If the old bulb didn't die fast enough, taste would push you to replace it anyway. And if taste lagged, regulations about efficiency would do it for you, some helpful, some conveniently timed. Impact rippled far beyond fixtures. The idea that overdurable deserved a penalty inside a lab or a spreadsheet traveled. You see its ghost in warranty windows that end right before common failures. You hear its echo when a customer service script frames a normal part swap as uneconomical. Consider upgrading. You feel it when a device is perfectly fine, except for one consumable that's hard to reach, expensive, or artificially locked. To understand why this matters now, look at how precise the Phoebus mechanism was. Measurable targets, testing infrastructure, fines that bite, and a public story about standards. That combination survives in new clothes. Replace tungsten with lithium. Replace a sealed globe with a sealed app. Swap lab technicians with update servers. The goal doesn't change. Keep you on the treadmill without making you angry enough to jump off. One detail would prove crucial later. Enforcement didn't require a villain's speech. It required a switch you couldn't see. In the 1920s, it was a coil of fraction thinner. Today, it might be a line of code. Phones learned the trick through software. Batterygate, iPhone throttling, and the silent slowdown. While that cartel tuned filaments, another kind of dimmer switch arrived a century later when you couldn't see. It lived inside your pocket. One December afternoon in 2017, a developer's benchmark chart lit up Reddit. Older iPhones, same model, same chips, suddenly crawling after an update. People swore they weren't imagining it. Their phones had aged overnight. To understand why, we need to go back a year. iPhone 6 and 6's owners were reporting random shutdowns when the processor spiked. Lithium-ion batteries age, their peak voltage sags. Under load, the phone can crash. Apple's engineers had a choice: recall batteries at scale or manage the spikes. They shipped code. iOS quietly throttled performance as the battery degraded, smoothing out the peaks to prevent those shutoffs. Here's the stakes moment. On paper, it's a safety story. In your hand, it felt like theft. Phones that ran fine yesterday lagged after an update you trusted. No alert, no slider, no consent. And at exactly the time carriers dangled upgrade deals, your old device felt tired. That feeling moved millions of dollars. What nobody knew then was how precisely the slowdown mapped to battery health. The worse the battery, the lower the ceiling on your CPU. That's smart engineering if your only KPI is stability. It's a problem when your KPI is trust. The patches arrived, the explanations didn't. Blog posts filled the gap. Apple slows phones to force upgrades. Conspiracy? Maybe. But remember the bulb. A small dial set behind the scenes can move an entire market. Action broke open when testers ran Geekbench on the same phone before and after replacing a battery. Get this, the score snapped back. A $35 swap made the phone feel new. Microstory: a college senior walks into a mall kiosk, trades cash for a fresh cell, and messages his group chat, "Dude, it's a different phone." That message, multiplied across social feeds, detonated the narrative. December 2017, Apple confirms what users suspected. Yes, iOS reduces performance on devices with aging batteries to avoid unexpected shutdowns. The apology lands weeks later. Apple says, "We would never intentionally shorten the life of any product." But they lower the price of out-of-warranty battery replacements and roll out a battery health meter. In settings, a new page appears. Maximum capacity, peak performance capability, and a toggle to disable performance management, even if it means your phone might reboot under heavy load. Impact arrives fast. Class action filings stack up. 30-plus states push deceptive practices claims. In France, regulators levy a fine for lack of transparency. In the US, Apple agrees to pay $113 million to settle with states and up to $500 million to settle with consumers. In Canada, provincial cases move too. Beyond cash, the cultural cost is higher. People start treating update like a loaded word. Meanwhile, something else is happening. The episode teaches everyday users a quiet truth about lithium-ion. Performance equals battery health, not metaphorically, literally. Suddenly, battery swaps surge. Independent repair shops see lines. Right repair advocates point at the sealed designs that make a 10-minute job into a multi-hour dance with glue and pentalobe screws. A consumable, embedded and obscured, became the lever that controlled the life of a $1,000 device. Here's where it gets sticky. Apple framed the throttle as protection. Engineers nod, the physics are real, but opacity is expensive. The company later adds battery health to iPads and MacBooks, leans into power management transparency, and still, parts pairing flags appear when you install a third-party cell. Warnings tell you the battery is unknown. Functionally fine, reputationally stained. The message is subtle: replace, but replace our way. The ripple effects aren't just legal, they're behavioral. People time updates around travel. They buy battery cases. They delay upgrades and then jump 2 generations at once. Accessory makers profit. Carriers adjust trade-in math. Most of all, a permanent open loop sits in the back of your mind. What else is tuned in software that you can't see? Now zoom out. The Phoebus blueprint was targets, testing, fines, and a story about standards. Batterygate's blueprint was thresholds, telemetry, throttles, and a story about safety. Both shift a curve that determines when you buy again. Neither requires cackling villains. Both need only a dial most people don't know exists. Microstory Part 2. A dad walks his kid through a battery swap at the kitchen table. iFixit guide open on a tablet, suction cup in one hand, spudger in the other. 30 minutes later, the phone boots, battery health shows 100% and the home screen flies. The kid grins. Ownership feels real for once. In the aftermath, regulators in the EU scrutinize update disclosures. US states push right-to-repair bills that make battery pricing, parts access, and diagnostic info harder to hide. Apple launches self-service repair in limited form, renting heavy calibration rigs to consumers. Progress with asterisks. This was the moment everything changed because it reset the public's sense of what wear means. Batteries wear, that's honest. But secrecy wears trust faster than chemistry wears cells. And once you see that a $35 part can cancel a $700 urge, you start asking different questions about every slowdown you feel. If software can age a phone, hardware can be locked too. Printer DRM, ink walls, and fake error messages. While phones learn to age in software, printers learn to say no. Not a crash, not a glitch, just a calm gatekeeping pop-up. Cartridge problem, replace with HP ink. Meanwhile, the boarding pass sits in your email, your suitcase is zipped, and the ride to the airport is honking outside. Get this, they weren't out of ink. They were out of permission. Here, ask why the stakes bite. Printing isn't optional when life hits deadlines. School forms at 8 a.m., tax papers by noon, a return label before the store closes. But the printer isn't a dumb box anymore. It's a checkpoint. Inside that plastic shell is a chip-to-chip conversation. The cartridge asks to be recognized. The printer checks a whitelist. Firmware decides whether your document gets paper or purgatory. Action looked like this. Companies added authentication chips to cartridges. HP called their version dynamic security. The pitch was security, protecting customers from counterfeit or unreliable ink. The effect was simple. After a firmware update, printers refused to work with third-party cartridges they'd happily used the week before. The message felt neutral. Ink cartridge missing or damaged. The result wasn't neutral if you were staring at a blinking red light and a deadline. Across forums, one tip bubbled up: turn off automatic updates. Another: never connect your printer to Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, something else was happening. Geography mattered. Region locking crept into the ecosystem. Some models effectively tied themselves to the country of first setup, meaning that moving homes or importing a printer could strand you. Same brand, same model, different region chip, no print. A user in Australia tries genuine cartridges, just not from the right market, and the machine shrugs. It isn't broken, just blocked. Here's the micro story. A traveler the night before a 6 a.m. flight tries to print a boarding pass. The printer chirps, "Supply problem." The cartridge level shows half full. Panic rises. They sprint to a 24-hour store and pay 3 times what they'd planned for approved ink. Back home, they slotted in 1 green checkmark and the page spills out like nothing happened. Crisis averted, trust depleted. Manufacturers framed it as quality control. Consumers called it a Tollbooth. Lawsuits followed, pointing to dynamic security updates that bricked non-HP ink, subscription traps that locked printing if your plan lapsed, and error messages that implied damage where none existed. Headlines stacked up, bricked after update, paywalled by a chip, settlement promises to make updates optional. In parallel, workarounds spread. People spoofed chips, swapped EEPROMs, or built tiny man-in-the-middle boards that sat between cartridge and printer to fake the conversation. It wasn't elegant, it worked. Impact arrived in living rooms and libraries. Families started abandoning inkjets for tank systems with visible reservoirs and cheap bottled refills. Schools leaned on shared laser printers to dodge the cartridge roulette. Right repair advocates found a perfect case study. Consumables turned into subscriptions, hardware performance gated by code most buyers never agreed to read. The phrase, consumables as a service, stopped being a joke and became a business model. What nobody knew at first was how far the lock could reach. Printers began phoning home, checking firmware, even offering security updates with benefits that felt abstract and costs that felt immediate. If you accepted, your third-party ink might stop. If you declined, you risked a future where declining wasn't optional. People learned to tape over update prompts like they taped laptop webcams. Printers joined the Do Not Update Club right next to phones after Batterygate. Meanwhile, region locking wasn't limited to ink. Some enterprise copiers tied themselves to initial supply codes, encoding a first taste is free, the rest is ours rule into silicon. Moved offices across borders. Good luck. The device looked fine, but the ecosystem didn't recognize its passport. Technicians would whisper the real fix, import the right region cartridge, or replace the control board and start over. Either way, pay. This was the moment everything changed because it shifted printing from mechanics to permissions. You weren't just buying pigment and paper feed. You were buying the right to pass a check you couldn't see. And once that check existed, it could grow features. Subscription meters that paused your printer mid-month, chips that disabled printing when a color you never used read empty, error strings that treated refilled cartridges as tampered. In the aftermath, pressure built. Regulators looked at disclosures. Courts weighed whether security meant safety or sales. Some settlements pushed firms to make firmware rollbacks possible, or at least optional. Consumers voted with wallets, tank systems, third-party friendly brands, or even used office lasers with cheap toner. The community published cartridge IDs, teardown guides, and bypass kits. A new habit formed. Before buying a printer, people checked not just page per minute, but whether it would refuse to print with the wrong logo on a chip. Here's the human angle that sticks. A parent at 11 p.m., a science fair poster due tomorrow, staring at replace cyan while printing black text. The kid asks, "Can we fix it?" The parent opens a forum thread, finds a trick, tape a contact, reset a counter, and the printer wakes. The page prints. The kid sleeps. The question lingers. If a sticker can free a page, what exactly did we buy? Now scale the repair lock across screws, every port, glue, and parts pairing. While you were taping over a printer chip, companies were hardening the rest of the house. Ports disappeared. Screws morphed into shapes you don't have bits for. Adhesives turned a simple swap into a heat gun ritual. And behind the glass, software took notes on every component, deciding whether your fix counted. Here's why that matters. Independence shrinks when the only thing between you and a working device is a warning screen you can't dismiss. A cracked screen isn't just glass, it's a negotiation. A dead battery isn't just chemistry, it's a checkpoint. Action looked small but added up. Pentalobe screws at the perimeter, harmless until your kit doesn't fit. Midframes bonded with industrial adhesive, fine until a battery puffs and you're prying next to a wafer-thin cable. Displays fused to glass, thinner sure, but now one ding means replacing a stack, not a layer. And when you do swap it, parts pairing steps in. The new piece works technically, but the phone declares unknown part. Face ID or true tone might vanish, unless the serial number matches what the board expects. Meanwhile, something else was happening in shops. Independent repair techs learned micro-soldering, mapped flex cable pinouts, and built donor boards to transfer chips that carried calibration data. A battery isn't just a battery anymore, it's an identity card. If the handshake fails, features fall away. The message is subtle, you can fix it, but only inside our walled garden. Stakes jump when you leave phones and pick up machines that feed families. Out on the prairie, farmers met the same lock with bigger price tags. Modern tractors run on firmware. Every subsystem throws diagnostic codes that require dealer-only tools to clear. Break a sensor at harvest, and you might sit in a field watching money rot while a technician drives 3 counties to type a password. Case flash, John Deere says repair is possible, just not everything. Farmers say possible doesn't help if you can't complete the fix without their software, so they got creative. Forums traded Ukrainian firmware, gray market tools that spoke the tractor's language, let you bypass software locks, read codes, and finish the job. It wasn't pretty, it was survival. Impact showed up in court filings and state houses. Antitrust suits argued that locking diagnostics and parts behind dealer networks created a repair monopoly. Judges started letting those claims proceed. At the same time, Deere signed memorandums promising fair and reasonable access to tools, progress, but with carve-outs big enough to drive a combine through. Farmers still sent screenshots of error codes they couldn't clear without phoning a desk hours away. Back in the city, laptops joined the club. Batteries were glued under logic boards. Keyboards were riveted into top cases, so a $5 key switch failure meant a $300 assembly. Track trackpads and webcams came serialized. Replace one and expect a triangle warning until an authorized server blesses the swap. For shops, the choice was stark. Become authorized and accept limits, or stay independent and fight warnings and parts blacklist. Here's the human beat. A neighborhood repair store that's been open 20 years turns a mother away because her son's phone shows important display message after a screen swap. The touch works. The colors are fine, but the badge on the lock screen makes her worry. She asks if it's safe. The tech says yes. The message says no. She goes to the mall. What nobody knew at purchase was how much of the product was a contract. EULAs hid behind setup screens. Warranties quietly voided if non-authorized parts were detected. Telemetry phoned home to check whether a calibration step happened on the right machine. A simple right, replace what you wear out, became conditional. Meanwhile, advocates pushed. Right repair bills forced disclosures, publish parts, tools, and diagnostics for consumers and shops. Some states added penalties for blocking software that enables lawful repairs. A few companies adjusted. Battery prices dropped, self-service portals opened, serial syncs expanded so you could pair a screen without shipping a board. But the center of gravity stayed the same. Control lives in code. This was the moment everything changed, because failure stopped being only mechanical. A hinge can work perfectly and still throw a fit if its cable ID isn't on a whitelist. A fresh camera can capture crisp photos and still lose portrait mode because it missed a handshake. You can tighten every screw and still fail the invisible exam. Micro story: a dad tries to replace a laptop battery the night before midterms. He unscrews 30 tiny fasteners, peels a booby-trapped pull tab that snaps, floods isopropyl to loosen glue, finally seats the new cell. The machine boots. Victory then flashes service recommended with a battery that's brand new. He stares. It's working. It's also marked. In the aftermath, a pattern emerged. Hardware barriers slow you. Software bars the door. Companies defend it as safety, security, and consistency. Consumers hear rent, control, and upsell. Both can be true, and that's the point. The safest system for a brand is the one they can police. The riskiest for you is the one you can't fix. When hardware fails, they point to normal wear. Sometimes it is the $6 bearing that kills a $12 washer. While phones and tractors argued with software, a quieter trap hid under your laundry room floor. It doesn't blink warnings. It just hums until it howls. Then a $6 bearing turns into a decision about throwing out a $1,200 washer. Here's why this matters. Most families don't budget for a new machine mid-year. When spin cycles shake like a freight train and the tub wobbles, you call a shop. They come back with a quote that feels like a joke. Parts and labor equal a new unit. You're not paying for a bearing, you're paying for a design choice. Action looks simple on a whiteboard. Weld the sealed tub into one assembly. Inside that sealed shell is a stainless basket spinning on a shaft that rides on two bearings and a seal. Normally, bearings wear. You press them out. You press in new ones, 90 minutes, back in business. But weld the plastic tubs together and suddenly those $6 bearings are trapped. No service port, no bolts, no halves to separate. If water sneaks past the seal, one drip, one load at a time, grease washes out, corrosion starts, and the bearing roars. You can't change just the bearing. You buy the entire drum and tub as one monster part. That part can run $300 to $500. Add labor that involves tearing the machine to pieces, and your invoice kisses the price of a new washer. Meanwhile, something else is happening behind the counter. Service managers learn to triage by model number. If it's welded, they don't even open the back. They write an estimate that nudges you toward the showroom. Uneconomical to repair. That phrase is code for, we designed it so the math hates you. Human stakes show up in small kitchens. A single parent hears the quote, stares at the pile of soccer uniforms and work scrubs, and does the math. Credit card or laundromat, the machine is 5 years old. The bearings failed because a seal tired out. Not abuse, not a freak accident where the engineer knew would happen. What nobody tells you is that the old way still exists. Plenty of washers use bolted tubs you can split with a socket wrench. The bearings are standard sizes. The seals are off the shelf. A press or a threaded puller, some patience, and you're spinning quietly again. But welded wins on the factory floor. It's faster to assemble. It meets a sealed for hygiene talking point, and it quietly moves future revenue from parts to whole unit. Micro story: a dad in a garage watches a video where someone cuts the welded seam with a fine-tooth blade, drills tiny pilot holes, and bolts the two halves back together with a gasket. He orders a $20 bearing and seal kit, a tube of RTV, and a bag of stainless bolts. Saturday, he labels every wire with blue painter's tape, yanks the tub, and spends an hour knocking out the rusted race with a chisel. His kid holds the flashlight. By dinner, the new bearings are seated, the tub is rejoined with 30 bolts, and the spin cycle sounds like rain instead of thunder. He saved $600 and earned a believer in mechanical honesty. Impact ripples outward. Landfills get fewer 200-pound plastic shells. Repair forums fill with model-specific guides. A cottage industry sells templates and bolt kits for popular welded tubs. Right repair groups hold washer teardown nights, showing neighbors the difference between serviceable and sealed. Meanwhile, brands with bolt-together designs quietly become cult favorites among landlords and fix-it circles because a Saturday fix beats a Sunday delivery. Manufacturers defend welded tubs with language you've heard before: alignment, balance, watertight integrity, hygiene. Engineers nod fewer joints can mean fewer leaks. But the test is simple. If the seal fails, can I replace the wear parts? On a welded tub, the answer is no by design. The bearing's price tag is small. The barrier is the plastic ring they fused on day one. Here, S where it folds back into the larger story. The Phoebus lab find overdurable bulbs. Printer firmware refused ink it didn't recognize. Parts pairing warned you away from non-blessed components. The welded tub is the same move in injection-molded plastic. Hide a cheap failure point behind an expensive assembly. You won't notice on day one. You'll pay on day 1001. Meanwhile, some brands pivot under pressure. They publish exploded diagrams again. They sell bearing kits with seals and a proper puller. They stamp the bearing size in the service manual. Others double down, bundling motors with tubs so a noisy bearing forces you to buy a stator you didn't need. The spreadsheet loves that. Your budget doesn't. A quick buyer's tell: look for tub assembly in parts catalogs. If bearings and seals aren't listed separately, you're staring at a future full-drum bill. Another hint: YouTube. If you see dozens of welded tub bolt mod videos for a model, that's not a fan club, that's a rescue operation. This was the moment everything changed because it proved you don't need a chip to control a product's lifespan. One hidden weld can do the job. And once you see it, you start checking every hinge, every pump, every wheel for the same trick. A cheap part buried so deep you'll give up and buy new. Automotive obsolescence. Keys, batteries, and software. While a welded tub can wreck a budget quietly, cars learn to do it loudly and with a smile. The dashboard lights up, the chime is polite, and then everything stops because a tiny battery in your key fob called time. Here, S why this matters. Mobility is non-negotiable. When a fob fails or a software flag trips, you don't miss a playlist, you miss work. You don't lose a feature, you lose a day. Action starts with something harmless: convenience keys. No blade, no twist, just walk up and pull the handle. Inside, a $2 coin cell does the handshake. When it dies, the car still starts. Right, sometimes. Other times, the immobilizer refuses. The manual hides a backup slot under cup holders. You find it by flashlight. If that fails, you're calling a tow. Meanwhile, something else was happening. Fobs got serialized. Replacements aren't just cut and coded, they're paired. Dealers bill a programming fee. Some lock the process behind brand tools and account logins. A lost fob becomes a triple hit: hardware, pairing, and a service appointment you didn't plan. A locksmith can do it until a model year shifts and access moves behind a subscription gate. Stakes climb under the hood. Batteries used to sit in plain sight with a top clamp and room for knuckles. Now they tuck under seats, behind liners, under cowls that demand special tools, or beside pyrotechnic cutoff modules that terrify DIYers. Swap one and the car might boot in limp mood unless you perform a battery registration, a software ritual that tells charging systems what chemistry and age to expect. Skip it and you risk warnings, alternator stress, or a dealer lecture about unauthorized maintenance. Here's the micro story. A rideshare driver finishes a 10-hour shift and shuts off the engine at a gas station. The car won't restart. The dash says no key detected. He holds the fob against the steering column. Nothing. He calls a tow. The dealer says the fob desinced. The bill, $380 for a new fob, $160 for programming plus the tow. He asks if a backup blade could have saved him. The advisor points to a slot he never knew existed and says, "On older models." While keys and batteries became checkpoints, software moved in on features. Heated seats bundled in a subscription, remote start gated behind an app plan, adaptive headlights unlocked after payment. The hardware ships installed, the access lives behind a monthly fee. Automakers call it flexibility, pay for what you use. Owners call it rent on parts they already bought. Meanwhile, diagnostics went the way of tractors. Obsolescence 2 still gives you a code, but deep modules hide behind factory tools, security gateways that block write access unless you authenticate. Independent shops subscribe, DIYers stare at a locked function list, need to calibrate a camera after a windshield swap. That's a scan tool, targets, and a session fee. Need to replace a sensor. Expect a learned procedure that a generic reader can't trigger. Human stakes show up on winter mornings. A family piles into a crossover, fingers numb, and the remote start won't engage because the app subscription lapsed. The button in the cabin still works, but it means walking out into the cold, unless a software flag says feature unavailable. The hardware is fine, the permission is. What nobody tells you at the test drive is how many parts are now identities. A headlight control unit, a radio, even a seat module carries a VIN tie. Swap with a used one and you might inherit someone else's locked coding, or worse, a theft lock that bricks it until a dealer releases it. Salvage yards learn to ask, will your car marry this part? Impact ripples to wallets and waste. Perfectly good modules sit on shelves because they're coded to the wrong car. Independent shops turn away work they used to love. Used car buyers discover that a previous owner canceled a service that used to be free. And now their map updates and traffic data are gone unless they add a card. Meanwhile, pressure builds. The EU leans on access rules so independent garages can keep coding and calibrating. Lawsuits challenge whether subscriptions on pre-installed hardware cross a line. Some automakers back off public backlash. Heated seats as a monthly fee becomes a PR punchline, but the software storefronts stay. A future OTA could reclassify anything as optional. Microstory Part 2. A commuter's dash lights up 12V battery low on a hybrid. He replaces the auxiliary battery himself. Easy access, same size, good brand. The car won't go ready. He learns about a reset sequence buried 3 menus deep in a service mode you enter by tapping a pedal and a button in the right rhythm. He nails it. The car wakes. Relief feels like ownership. The process felt like a pop quiz he didn't know he'd enrolled in. This was the moment everything changed, because a car stopped being only steel and started being policy. A key isn't a key, it's a password. A battery isn't a battery, it's a data point. A seat heater isn't a wire, it's a SKU. The parts you touch work or don't based on rules you didn't write, and that's the business model. Smart appliances, dumb lifespans. While cars turned features into SKUs, your kitchen learned a new trick. Work fine today, lose brains tomorrow. The oven still heats, the fridge still cools, until an app update says otherwise. It's not a crack or a clog, it's a service ending. Here's why the stakes sting. You bought a machine for cooking and keeping food cold, basic, non-negotiable stuff. Then a cloud outage hits and your smart oven can't preheat from the panel because it's waiting on a server handshake. The meal still happens after you hard reset a Wi-Fi module you never asked for. Multiply that by years. Now picture the day the company sunsets the app. Your hardware didn't wear out, your access did. Action looks tidy in a brochure. Control anywhere, over-the-air updates, better over time. In practice, an appliance ties core functions to a login. Remote start, temperature profiles, even the ice maker route through a phone account. When the service stumbles, the lights blink dumbly. When support ends, features vanish. People wake up to patch notes that quietly remove integrations they depended on, or to a notification that says compatibility with their phone's OS stopped at last year's version. Meanwhile, something else is happening in living rooms. Firmware fixes arrive for safety, legitimate risks like overheating, but they carry side effects. Laggier touch panels, disabled modes, stricter locks after door opens. You don't get a changelog with trade-offs, you get a promise. And because the appliance is connected, you don't always get a choice. Opt out and the app nags. Opt in and the device behaves differently the night before a dinner party. Human stakes land on small rituals. A parent tells a kid to set the oven to 400. The kid taps the glass panel. It refuses because the Wi-Fi dropped. The app says unable to connect to cloud. The parent digs for the hidden physical override. 2 taps here, a long press there, like a gamer entering a cheat code. The oven finally warms. The kid asks why the stove needs the internet. The parent laughs, then doesn't. Case Flash, the subscription ice maker. On launch day, it sounded absurd. Pay monthly for something a 1990s fridge did without thinking. But the pattern was familiar. A smart module measured use, gated production, and paused during service interruptions. A storm knocks out connectivity, and suddenly no ice on a July afternoon. The line between convenience and dependence snapped, and you could hear it in kitchens from Phoenix to Miami. Impact surfaces in returns. Retailers report spikes after app support ends. Customers wheel back machines that work but not as advertised. Warranties tiptoe around cloud dependencies, calling them service availability outside coverage. Support scripts frame missing features as experience changes. Translation: the body is fine, the brain moved. What nobody outside the roadmap meeting knows is how often product plans assume a 2 or 3 year app life on a 10-year chassis. Teams ship hardware with chipsets that won't get security patches for long. Then OS updates roll through, BLE stacks drift, and the phone stops talking to the oven. The box still bakes, but the feature you bought it for, the thing you paid extra for, went missing in an API deprecation. Meanwhile, data shows up as a quiet tax. The app asks for location, camera for QR onboarding, contacts for sharing access. The fridge logs door opens, the washer logs cycles and detergents, the oven logs recipes launched. The pitch is personalization, the revenue is segmentation. Energy insights become upsell prompts. Replacement reminders become brand-locked links. You're renting insights about your own habits back from your own devices. Micro story: a renter inherits a smart thermostat locked to the previous tenant's account. It refuses scheduling changes because owner privilege is required. The landlord can't find the login. Support asks for proof of residency, serials, and a callback window. 2 weeks later, winter nights still swing between sauna and icebox. The valves and relays are fine. The permission is. Here's where pattern recognition helps. We've seen firmware block ink and pair parts. We've seen welded tubs bury $6 bearings. Smart appliances add a new lever. Service sunsetting, not breakage, not even throttling. Just a quiet congratulations, you bought a feature with an expiration date. Pressure builds. Regulators start asking whether core functions can be tied to cloud. Some regions push for minimum support windows that match expected lifespans, not phone cycles. Consumer groups demand offline fallbacks for basics: bake, cool, wash. A few brands respond with local controls that keep essentials alive when the app dies. Others double down on subscriptions, recipe libraries behind paywalls. Pro wash modes unlocked monthly. Premium cycles that only run when a billing flag is green. Meanwhile, buyers get smarter. Forums maintain cloud-free shortlists, ovens with real knobs, fridges with mechanical ice makers, washers that run full cycles without a handshake. People learn to set routers to quarantine appliances, blocking outbound calls while keeping local control. Teardowns call out replaceable control boards and standard relays. A repairable smart appliance isn't an oxymoron. It just requires a company that treats connectivity like a bonus, not a gate. Final beat, human and hopeful. A home cook updates their oven and loses a favorite mode. They're furious. They call, they post, they return it. Then they buy a model with both an app and a row of honest dials. 6 months later, a cloud hiccup hits and dinner still comes out right. That tiny relief is the opposite of obsolescence. It's resilience designed in, not bolted cracks in the wall. Meanwhile, pressure didn't just simmer online. It walked into state houses with broken phones, tractors stuck in fields, and washers that howled like jet engines. The question was simple enough to fit on a bumper sticker. If I bought it, can I fix it? The answer started to change. Action began with small wins. States passed right repair laws that forced companies to publish service manuals, sell parts at fair prices, and unlock diagnostic tools for anyone willing to do the work. The language sounded dry: disclosure requirements, parts parity, timelines, but the effect in living rooms and garages was loud. Suddenly, a shop owner could look up the calibration steps without begging a brand portal. A student could order a screen and the adhesive that actually fits, not the mystery kit that delaminates a week later. Battery prices dropped. Suppliers listed genuine and aftermarket options side by side. Repair networks that had been whisper campaigns turned into public directories. Here's a micro story. A sophomore spills coffee on a laptop 2 weeks before finals. The campus repair desk shrugs. $300 for diagnostics, maybe more. She checks a new state portal linked by a repair forum and finds the official service manual. It shows the keyboard is riveted, but the top case is compatible across models. A local indie shop, newly stocked from Parts Unlocks, has a refurb top case ready. She trades cash for a repair that used to be impossible without an authorized badge. Paper turned into a saved semester. Meanwhile, something else was happening across industries. Farmers took their fights to court and to regulators. Antitrust claims said locking diagnostics and service behind dealer gates created repair monopolies. A federal court let those claims move forward, and the Department of Justice filed statements explaining why access to tools matters for competition. At the same time, John Deere signed an agreement with the Farm Bureau promising fair and reasonable access to software and tools. Farmers said good start, now deliver. The gray market, Ukrainian firmware, scene didn't vanish overnight, but it lost some oxygen when official paths cracked open. The stakes are bigger than a screen or a starter motor. Independent shops that anchor communities, corner phone techs, rural mechanics, survive on access. When parts pairing flags shrink because legislators require public pairing procedures, those shops say yes more often. When manuals publish torque specs instead of proprietary calibration secrets, DIY stops being a coin toss. The economic ripple is real. Competitive repair pushes down authorized pricing, extends product life, and keeps money local instead of funneling every fix through a mall counter or a dealership bay. What nobody knew when these bills were first introduced was how hard the carve-outs would fight back. Companies argued safety and cybersecurity. They warned that open diagnostics would enable theft, that battery swaps could cause fires, that camera calibration in the wrong hands could endanger drivers. Some of that is true. Repair needs skill. But the compromise that emerged in better laws wasn't open everything always. It was scoped access. Tools for lawful repair, data that excludes encryption keys, procedures that balance safety checks with independence. In other words, the real world. Impact shows up in prices and behaviors. After parts access mandates, battery replacements drop from triple digits to sane numbers. Screens ship with the right gaskets. Vendors publish compatibility lists so you don't buy the part that technically fits but breaks Face ID. Some phone makers expand self-service repair programs, renting calibration rigs, or better, softening the requirement so a new camera can retain features without a server handshake. Laptops move away from riveted keyboards to modular decks. Even a few appliance brands publish exploded diagrams again, with separate bearings, seals, and pumps. Here, where the walls still hold. Delays become the new denial. Parts are available but ship in weeks. Manuals are posted behind friction portals. Calibration tools require an account review that takes longer than a repair. A clause allows authorized-only categories that just happen to cover the high-margin components. Consumers feel progress, then hit a pane of glass at shoulder height. It's not a door yet, it's a window. Microstory, quick and quiet. A neighborhood shop prints out a brand new pairing guide released under a state law. That afternoon, a customer walks in with a shattered screen and a budget. The tech follows the guide, scans a QR, pairs the panel, and hands back a phone without the dreaded unknown part warning. The customer leaves a review that reads, "Feels like my phone again." That sentence is the point. Meanwhile, the EU turns the crank harder. EcoSign rules tie repairability to energy labels. Spare parts must be available for years, not quarters. Screws beat glue in scorecards. Companies that sell sealed tubs or blocked software face questions they can't wave away with hygiene or security. In response, global brands harmonize up instead of down. If they have to build a repairable version for Europe, they sometimes ship that design everywhere. Not from virtue, from logistic. Here's the catch: laws open doors, habits keep them open. If no one walks through, if people don't buy the models that score high on repair, if shops don't order legit parts because they're still faster on eBay, if schools don't teach safe battery handling, then cracks reseal under marketing and convenience. The other side knows this. The pressure never stops. Neither can yours. The meaning lands here. Right to repair isn't just a slogan, it's a test of ownership. When you can choose parts without begging, read manuals without a password, and finish a fix without a warning light shaming you, the product feels like yours. And when millions of those tiny choices add up, the corporate math tilts. Planned obsolescence doesn't vanish, but it loses the only thing it truly needed: your quiet compliance. How they plan the death, the corporate math. While laws pry doors open, the boardroom quietly adjusts dials. This isn't a smoky backroom, it's a spreadsheet with a heartbeat. The question on slide 3 is always the same. How long should this last to hit our targets? Here, why that matters. Longevity isn't just engineering, it's pricing, margin, and refresh cadence. A product that lives forever wrecks quarterly numbers. A product that dies too fast triggers returns. Somewhere between heroic and infuriating is a curve labeled acceptable failure rate, and that's where most companies aim. Action starts with cost curves. Every part has a price, a tolerance, and a failure distribution. Product managers sit with reliability engineers and set an MTBF, mean time between failure, that lines up with warranty length plus a cushion. If your warranty is 1 year, the cushion might be 18 months. For premium lines, stretch to 3 or 5. Not because physics demands it, because service cost models do. A longer cushion costs parts and process changes. Screws instead of glue, thicker bearings, higher cycle connectors. Those costs get weighed against projected service calls, replacement attachment, and the upsell halo. Meanwhile, something else is happening in marketing. Feature caps shape desire. You don't ship the best you can build, you ship tiers. The same board might support Wi-Fi 6E, but the base SKU locks it to Wi-Fi 5. The same motor can spin 1,400 RPM, but firmware limits it to 1,100 unless you buy Pro. The same camera sensor appears across models. Software toggles raw, night mode, or higher bitrate. That's not a conspiracy theory, it's yield management. Hold back enough to justify next year's slide. 10% brighter, 15% faster, one new color that photographs beautifully. Stakes climb when the CFO redraws the P and L to depend on services. Accessories, subscriptions, and consumables become the second act. That's the cartridge chip, the paywalled heated seat, the premium wash behind an app plan. The math is simple. Hardware margin compresses, service revenue compounds. Tie the experience to a cloud login and the refresh isn't just a device, it's a customer lifetime value model. If CLV from ink, tips, or software exceeds the margin from selling you one durable box, the roadmap shifts to protect the tap, not the tank. What nobody sees on launch day is the slider called SKU churn. Faster churn means more product codes, shorter support windows, more this year's model-only spare parts. It looks like innovation, it behaves like erosion. Tooling gets amortized in 18 months, not 4 years. Suppliers are squeezed for cheaper connectors that still pass drop tests. Then procurement shaves a cent off the gasket by choosing adhesive over screws. A cent times 1,000,000 units funds a campaign. A cent in your laundry room turns into a Saturday with a heat gun. Inside those meetings, reliability is probabilistic, not moral. A bearing spec that yields a 4% failure rate at year 3 might be acceptable if it drops to 1% by swapping vendors and adding $1.20 to the bill of materials. If the retail price can't rise, that $1.20 comes from somewhere else. A thinner backplate, fewer screws, or the glue you cursed last section. The Phoebus Lab Fine lives on as a red cell in a KPI sheet. Overperforming lifespan erodes replacement velocity. Translate that into too durable means we miss the upsell window. Meanwhile, design teams thread the needle. Many engineers hate this part. They build test rigs, cycle hinges 50,000 times, run thermal chambers overnight, and lobby for a better connector that adds weeks to supply lead times. Sometimes they win. Often a product manager points to the curve. Our core buyers upgrade every 24 months, don't spend to support year 6. The exception is halo products or regulated markets where failure is catastrophic. Their lifespan sell. Everywhere else, the safest place for a bonus is the middle of the bell curve. Micro Story, a mid-level PM, gets praised for feature velocity. He didn't invent anything new. He split one robust mode into 3 SKUs, trimmed warranty on the base model by 6 months, and paired the consumable to the app. Sell-through jumped, returns held steady. Finance cheered. A year later, forums hum with workarounds. He moves on, the model line keeps the gates. Impact ripples at retail. Sales teams push bundles that fix the very friction the roadmap created. Extended warranties, ink subscriptions with free printers, protection plans that mostly mirror the projected failure window. The price you see is only the first inning. Attach rates are the score. If too many buyers choose the durable competitor, marketing pivots. Attack with convenience, not lifespan. Never think about it again beats serviceable bearings in an end cap slogan. Here's the counterintuitive twist. You can reverse the math at home. Test before you buy. Open repair guides, price a battery and a screen, search parts catalogs for bearings and seals, read service manuals for exploded views. If a $25 part fixes a $500 failure in an hour, you're trading money for time. If the only part listed is a $400 assembly, you're trading time for a trap. Companies notice when models with high repair scores outsell sealed ones. That feedback loop is the only one that beats the spreadsheet. So yes, the death gets planned. Not with a skull and crossbones stamp, but with MTBF targets, tiered firmware, SKU churn, and service lines that prefer permission over parts. And once you see the dials, you stop mistaking the timer for fate. On-camera teardown, battery, bearings, and a board. Proof beats promises, so let's do 3 fast teardowns. A phone, a washer hub, and a logic board. The point isn't heroics, it's to show you where the traps live and how to spot them before you buy. Start with the phone. Power down, 2 pentalobes out, suction cup lifts the edge. Feel that gummy resistance? That's adhesive guarding a consumable. Peel the pull tabs. If they snap, you're heating and prying next to a flex cable thinner than a hair. 10 minutes later, the battery's out. Cost at retail, $30 to $60, less if you buy direct when brands behave. The catch isn't the part, it's what happens after. Drop in a genuine cell without an authorized calibration, and you might get a service badge or unknown part. Performance stays fine, the warning nags you. That's parts pairing in plain sight, a handshake you can't see, but you'll feel every morning on your lock screen. Checklist this in your head. Are there starter screws you own bits for, or weird perimeter screws? Are the battery pull tabs reachable without stripping the whole phone? Can you buy an OEM battery at a sane price? And will your camera, Face ID, or True Tone survive the swap without a private server blessing? If manuals exist and pairing is documented, that's a green flag. If you're renting a 40-pound calibrator, that's yellow turning red. Now the washer. Pull the back panel and you'll see the pulley and shaft that carry the inner basket. Grab the parts catalog. If you can order bearings and a seal by number, you're in luck. If the only SKU is tub assembly, you've found the weld. Split tub designs let you unbolt, press out 2 standard bearings, seat a new seal, and reassemble. A Saturday, a cheap puller, quiet laundry. Welded tubs hide a $6 failure behind a $400 part and 2 hours of plastic wrestling. The trap isn't complexity, it's denial. When the quote equals a new machine, that's design doing accounting. Checklist: does the model's exploded view show separate bearings, seals, and a gasket, or one monolithic tub? Are there bolt heads around the seam or a smooth plastic ring? Can you find a service bulletin acknowledging bearing kits? Green flags, split tubs, listed seals, service windows. Red flags, sealed for hygiene, no bearing SKUs, motor bundled with the tub. Finally, the board. Any modern device has at least one chip tied to identity: battery controller, camera, secure element. Replace a display and you might keep touch but lose color calibration. Swap a camera and portrait mode dies until a serial is married. On some boards, you can move the tiny EEPROM that carries pairing data from the old part to the new micro-soldering skill, not magic. On others, that data lives inside a secure enclave you can't touch. That's the line between repairable with patience and authorized or nothing. Checklist: does the vendor publish pairing procedures? Do they sell calibration tools to the public or gate them behind accounts you can't get? Is there a community-documented method, data transfer, QR pairing that doesn't break features? Bonus points if the brand commits in writing that core functions won't be blocked after third-party repairs. Now the math that matters: time, cost, outcome. Battery, 30 to 90 minutes, $30.80. Full performance, maybe a badge. Bearings, 2 to 5 hours, $25.80 in parts if serviceable, $400, $700 if welded trap. Board repair, varies wildly, free if pairing is open, pricey if every swap demands a server handshake. Here's the move for buyers. Before you bring anything home, run 4 tests. 1. Search teardown and watch the first 10 minutes screws or glue. 2. Price the top 3 failure parts: battery, screen, pump, bearing. If the parts equal half the product, walk. 3. Check for pairing. Does the company explain it? 4. Look up community fixes. If people can complete a repair without losing features, that's ownership. Now you've seen it up close. A phone battery, a washer's bearings, a board's handshake. None of this relies on luck. It relies on choice, survival, yours and theirs. Now that you've seen the traps up close, here's how to buy like an insider without turning your weekends into teardown class. Start before you touch a box. Search teardown plus the model. In the first 10 minutes, you'll learn more than any ad. Count screws. If you see pentalobes, torques, or tri-wings, fine bits are cheap. If you see melted plastic posts and endless glue, that's a tax on future you. Cross-check iFixit or community guides. If there's no guide after a year on the market, assume the brand didn't plan for you to open it. Next, price the failure parts. Phones, battery, screen, charge port, laptops, keyboard, top case, battery, SSD, washers, bearings, seals, pump, fridges, fans, water valve, ice maker. If the top 2 parts plus labor exceed half the product price, walk. If bearings and seals aren't sold separately, walk faster. For printers, look up dynamic security and region locking for the exact model. If both show up, pivot to tank systems or laser printers with cheap toner. Check pairing and calibration. Does the company publish pairing steps for screens, batteries, and cameras? Do they sell tools to the public? If the only path is an authorized portal, budget for warnings or lost features after repair. For appliances, confirm that core functions work offline. If bake, wash, or cool requires cloud, that's a hidden timer. Now, the red flags you can spot in 5 minutes. Sealed tubs in washers, tub assembly only. No bearings or seals listed. Proprietary ink subscriptions and dynamic security. Notes in printer firmware. Non-standard screws with no service manual posted. Cloud-locked basics. Ovens that need accounts to preheat. Fridges that gate ice behind apps. Paywalled hardware features in cars or appliances. Green flags. Repair manuals posted. Part numbers public. Exploded diagrams with sub-assemblies. Standard ports and screws. Replaceable batteries. Modular keyboards. Offline fallbacks for smart features. Local control still works when Wi-Fi dies. Parts pairing procedures documented. Calibration available without gatekeeping. Before you buy, run the ownership test. Can you identify and purchase the top 2 wear parts at sane prices? And can a competent indie shop install them without losing features? If yes, you own it. If no, you're renting. Build habits that extend life without babying gear. Battery hygiene, avoid chronic 100% swings. Keep devices cool. Replace cells at 80% health instead of limping to 60%. Filters and airflow, clean lint traps, fridge coils, and fan intakes. Heat kills electronics faster than workload. Surge protection and clean power. A $20 protector or UPS often outlives a $400 board. Update control. Auto update off on printers notorious for lockouts. Manual delayed updates on phones after major releases. For appliances, accept safety fixes, skip enhancements that add nothing you need. Baseline tests. Run a benchmark or spin test when new. If performance craters after an update, you'll know. Shop smarter with a 2-tab trick. Tab 1, vendor page. Tab 2, parts catalog. If tab 2 is bare or paywalled, assume headaches. Search the model with bearings, battery, or screen price. If the top results are hacks and forum laments, believe them. If you find legit part SKUs and reputable sellers, that's confident. Brands matter, but policies matter more. Support models where reps point you to manuals, not NDAs. Favor companies that publish repair scorecards and commit to parts availability windows measured in years. Beware public pledges that shrink in practice. We support repair, followed by 6-week parts delays is theater. Micro routine when you unbox. Photograph serials and part labels. They help later with pairing or warranty. Download the manual and stash a local copy. Register for parts catalogs if offered before you need them. Label screws and cables in little bags if you ever open it. Your future self is forgetful. Finally, flip the corporate math. Choose the more repairable SKU even if it's less flashy. Spend $20 more now to save $200 later. Post your wins, the $35 battery that saved a phone, the bolt mod that saved a washer. Share sources for parts and guides. One friend changes a purchase because of you, and a product team somewhere updates a slide. That's how standards move, from labs and spreadsheets back to kitchens and pocket. Brands, models, and policies to avoid support. We've talked traps and tools, now let's name patterns you can spot on a shelf. This isn't a blacklist or a saint list, it's a field guide. Red flags first, then green. And yes, policies count as much as logos. Start with the obvious landmines. Avoid washers that hide bearings behind tub assembly only. If parts catalogs don't list separate bearings and seals, you're buying a future $400 plastic shell for a $6 wear part. Phrases like sealed tub for hygiene or integrated drum are code for welded. If you already see YouTube bolt mod rescues for that model, that's your warning flare. Printers next. Steer clear of inkjets advertising dynamic security, instant ink lock-in, or cartridges protected to your printer. Region-locked cartridges are another headache. If the box hints at regional codes, pass. Prefer tank systems with visible reservoirs or workhorse lasers with cheap aftermarket toner and no spooky security updates. If firmware updates have a history of bricking third-party supplies, you're gambling with deadline. Appliances that tether basics to cloud go in the no pile. If a stove won't preheat without a login or an ice maker stalls during a service hiccup, that's planned downtime disguised as smart. Look for models that still cook, cool, and wash offline. If the app is a remote, fine. If it's a requirement, walk. Phones and laptops with aggressive parts pairing deserve caution. If replacing a display kills True Tone or Face ID without a proprietary server, bless. Budget for an authorized bill or choose a device that publishes pairing procedures. Riveted keyboards and glued batteries in laptops are another red flag. One sticky strip snaps and your $5 key switch becomes a $300 top case. Cars, watch for paywalled features baked into the hardware. If heated seats, remote start, or driver assists are subscriptions on parts already installed, expect more of it later. Also check whether essential programming flows through open standards or sits behind brand-only tools and security gateways that lock out indie shops. Now the green flags. Brands that publish repair manuals, list part numbers publicly, and keep exploded diagrams online deserve your money. When a washer shows bearings, seals, and gaskets by SKU, that's a serviceable design. When a phone maker documents battery, camera, and display pairing steps for consumers and independent shops, that's ownership, not rental. For printers, SuperTank designs with bottled ink, replaceable maintenance boxes, and update controls are your allies. Bonus if the vendor commits in writing not to use firmware to block third-party consumables. For appliances, insist on offline fallbacks. Physical knobs, local controls that ignore cloud outages, and control boards with replaceable relays instead of sealed monolith. If the company states a support window that matches the appliance's real lifespan, 5 to 10 years, not 2, pay attention. Policy matters. Companies that back right repair laws, not just press releases, signal culture. Look for public commitments to parts availability windows measured in years, and check whether those parts actually ship quickly. If they sell calibration tools or open pairing portals without a dealer badge, they're betting on you. If they promise access but hide it behind account reviews and weeks-long delays, that's theater. Community proof helps. Scan repair databases and scorecards before you buy. If a model has high repair scores, lots of documented fixes, and parts at sane prices, you'll feel it years later. If the forums are full of no parts, only assemblies, believe them. Quick field checks you can do in store. Flip to the parts page on your phone. Bearings and seals listed. Good, only tub assembly, bad. Search model plus dynamic security. If you see lawsuits and lockouts, pivot. Ask support about offline operation. If they can't explain how to bake without Wi-Fi in one sentence, you've got your answer. Price a battery and a screen. If they're available and pairing is documented, green. If the only path is authorized service, red. Finally, reward the ones who try. Some brands quietly ship bolt-together tubs, publish manuals, and avoid subscription traps even when they could squeeze you. They won't headline a keynote. They will save your Saturday. Vote for that with your wallet, post the wins, and tag the policies. When a product team sees repairable models outsell sealed ones, roadmaps change. That's not hope, that's metric. Pressure points. How viewers force change. We've mapped the traps, now let's push the levers that move them. This doesn't take a march. It takes paper, screenshots, and timing. Companies optimized for quiet compliance. Your job is to be loud at the right moments. Start where it stings fastest. Returns. When a firmware update blocks third-party ink or an appliance loses features you paid for, don't troubleshoot in circles. Return it inside the window and name the reason on the form. Feature removed after update. Region lock prevents use. Sealed tub, no serviceable bearings. Retailers aggregate those notes. Enough flagged returns and buyers escalate with vendors. That hits wholesale terms, not just PR. Meanwhile, file a complaint with your state attorney general. It sounds formal, it's a web form. Attach photos, receipts, and the exact wording of the error. AG's build case files across hundreds of identical submissions. That's how dynamic security ended up in lawsuits and settlements. A single report echoes, 100 form a chorus, thousands become an investigation. Small claims court is the pressure valve most consumers forget. It's fast, cheap, and scary for companies because they must send someone or settle. Bring your invoice, the ad that promised a feature, and evidence the product lost it or blocked repair. Judges don't care about marketing poetry, they care about expectations and unfair practices. One ruling can force a local policy change. 10 in a region triggers legal review. Use social proof with receipts, not rants. 5 photos tell the story: the feature at purchase, the update prompt, the error message, the denied repair, the return receipt. Post them together. Tag the brand, the retailer, and the regulator. That bundle travels, journalists can run it, AGs can cite it, and other buyers can replicate the steps. Not broken, just blocked becomes a caption people recognize. Sign up for class actions when they match your issue. They won't buy you a house, but they force discovery, the emails and memos where decisions live. Discovery is how we learned phones were throttled for stability, how printers enforced brand-only ink, and how service sunsets were framed. Settlements can mandate clearer disclosures, optional updates, or rollbacks. Even better, they tell every product manager in the industry what not to ship next time. Coordinated tip lines matter. Regulators and reporters both keep them. Send model numbers, software versions, and dates. Was working on 10.4.2, bricked on 10.5. That's gold. It lets investigators reproduce the failure and pins responsibility to a change, not user error. If you're technical, include packet captures or teardown notes. If you're not, include timestamps and photos. Precision beats fury. Targeted boycotts beat blanket vows. Pick the policy, not the logo. No sealed tubs, no cartridge DRM, no paywalled hardware. Share a short list of alternatives that meet the test. Split tubs with separate bearings, tank printers with bottled ink, phones with published pairing procedures. People need a next step, not just a no. Leverage the warranty and the card in your wallet. Extended warranties often mirror the engineered failure window. Use them. Credit cards with purchase protection will refund when features disappear within the coverage period. Document, escalate, then charge back with your evidence packet if the brand stonewalls. Payment networks speak a language companies respect. Join the repair pressure where it counts. Comment on proposed right repair rules. Legislators read counts and quotes. Show up to local hearings with a dead board and a parts price sheet. $6 bearing, $400 tub lands better than corporate greed. When a company opens a parts portal, use it even if it's pricier than eBay, then post the experience. Volume justifies those programs in the next budget cycle. Micro actions scale. Leave product reviews that mention repair, battery and screen available, pairing documented, or region lock, no offline mode. Those lines help the next buyer avoid a trap and teach the algorithm what matters. Upvote practical reviews, downvote fluff. Proof this works: phone throttling led to apologies, battery price drops, and toggles. Printer lockouts spurred lawsuits and settlements promising optional updates. Tractor locks drew antitrust scrutiny, MOUs, and now federal action. State repair laws already cut battery prices and opened manuals. One last lever is quiet but sharp. Choose the model that's slightly more repairable and tell the brand why. A dozen emails don't move a roadmap. 1,000 purchases do. Attach your receipt. Copy support. Metrics make the memo that changes the next design review. The single shocking reveal: ownership is an illusion. Get this, every trick we've seen points to the same quiet truth. You paid for the hardware, but the company kept the keys, not metaphorically, literally. Licenses ride shotgun with screws and glue. EULAs sit under agree. And that one tap hands over control of updates, features, and what counts as a legitimate fix. Here's how the illusion works. You bring home a product that looks complete. Inside, it's governed by permissions. A chip verifies a cartridge, a board verifies a camera, a server verifies your oven. When the handshake fails, the machine isn't broken, it's withheld. That's DRM, that's parts pairing, that's a login gate on an ice maker. The legal wrapper says you own the chassis. The code says you rent the function. Meanwhile, something else is happening on paper. Warranties stretch to cover what helps them and snap shut when it helps you. Replace a screen at a neighborhood shop and a feature degrades by design. Swap a bearing the factory buried and the brand calls it tampering. Even when laws pry open manuals and parts, the center of control stays in firmware. Warnings, locks, pairing steps that only pass when a remote server nods yes. This is the moment everything changed because it reframes planned obsolescence from breakage to permission. The Phoebus lab find bulbs for lasting too long. Today, a dashboard toggles features off unless your billing flag is green. A sealed tub buries a $6 fix. Today, a secure element buries a serial that locks out your new camera. Ink DRM said no to the color you poured. Now an update says no to the function you bought. The method evolved. The goal didn't. Human beat. A grandmother saves up for a phone to FaceTime grandkids. She drops it, gets an affordable screen at a trusted shop, then watches important display message live on the lock screen for weeks. It works. It's marked. She feels like she did something wrong. She didn't. The system told her she didn't own an everyday repair. What nobody at checkout mentions is the clause that turns products into rentals. License, service, account, subscription. These words appear harmless until the day the server sunsets, the feature goes dim, or the serial won't pair. Then your possession becomes a hostage you feed monthly. Not broken, just blocked. And yet the reveal isn't a dead end, it's a map. Ownership is a set of behaviors you practice, not a receipt you frame. Choose designs with bolts over welds, parts over assemblies, manuals over mystique, offline controls over cloud gates, pairing documented. Good. Bearings sold separately? Good. App adds convenience, not necessity? Good. If a device demands a blessing to replace the wear part, it's not yours, it's theirs. You walk. Pressure flips incentives. When buyers reward repairable SKUs and return lock-in, product teams rewrite slides. When shops use official pairing portals opened by law, warnings disappear. When regulators set support windows that match real lifespans, sunsetting a core feature gets expensive. The illusion cracks where habits and policy meet. So call it what it is. A rental economy hiding in plain sight. DRM on ink, welds on washers, licenses on tractors, subscriptions on heaters. If you can't fix it, control it, or keep it working offline, you never owned it. The good news, you can reclaim it. One battery bought, one welded tub avoided, one printer returned, one complaint filed, one state law passed. Ownership turns back from a story they told you into a thing you can do. They turned ownership into a subscription with a timer, but every design choice can be outvoted by smarter buys and stubborn repairs. Swap one purchase this month for a repairable pick, then share this with one friend stuck in an upgrade trap, and subscribe for the next lie we're exposing. Your choices rewrite their math. Running, threaded micro stories, 3 threads to weave through any watch. Boarding pass panic, it's 5 a.m., a dad taps print, the HB blinks cartridge problem. He mutters, cancels the update he didn't ask for, and sprints to a pharmacy for overpriced OEM ink. He makes the flight by 4 minutes. Echo line not broken, just blocked. Washer quote shock, a parent hears the spin roar. Shop says sealed tub, $480 plus labor. They find a guide, drill the welds, press in $6 bearings, rebolt the halves. The laundry room goes quiet. Echo line, $6 part, $600 trap. Phone revival, a student's iPhone crawls. $35 battery swap, 10 screws, 2 pull tabs. Important battery message, nags but performance returns. Final saved. Echo line, ownership test, can you fix it? Drop 1 every few minutes to reset attention and keep stakes human.